So last time we exported out our idle, we actually want to have a default pose, something like this, that we can just bring in. I generally save off the default T-pose as robot underscore SM, and the SM stands for static mesh. I'm going to turn off animation since we don't want any animations to go with it. We just want that model with the skeletal information. So I'm going to hit export all on that. I'm going to go ahead and hit yes. I want to replace that because I just had it earlier. Now let's go ahead and do file, save scene as, and let's save this as walk animation. And so we have a separate walk animation file. All right, so I'm going to pause the video for a moment and show you some just really quick Richard Williams diagram on what I'm going to be using as a base to animate off of this. All right, so here you can see this is a very basic kind of diagram of how the key poses to create a walk cycle. I'm actually going to briefly just go through this with you to, one-on-one. We're not going to necessarily keep jumping back and referencing this, but you can pretty much see there's a contact pose. This is usually highlighted as frame 1 and 24 or 1 and 30. This is the down pose 4 and 16 and so forth. So we're going to go ahead and just do our own little generic walk. So let me go ahead and pause the video and jump back into Maya. All right, so here we are back in Maya, and let's go to panels and do, let's see, orthographic, and you can see there's front, side. If we go to side here, actually new would be better, and we just go to left, and so now we're looking at the left side of our character. And actually, you know what, let's go back to perspective. I think that might be better. So let's go ahead and just start off now at frame 1. And instead of frame 30, let's go with a generic 24 frame walk. And that's also going to require us to go into our settings. So let's click the little character who's running with the cog. And on our time slider here, you can see there's 30 frames per second. What I want to do is change frame rate down to 24. And now I get 24 frames by 1. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. So let's make sure that we are now at 24 still. Not 19. There we go. Okay. So if you remember that image, frame 1, and this is not going to be our best walk cycle, but it's just to show you how you can quickly get something in. So frame 1, we have 1 foot back here, and then we have 1 foot forward like that. And let's go ahead and turn on auto key. And then we have our hips down just a little bit like this. So you can see we got a little bit of a walk going. So I'm going to go ahead and hit S to set a key on our root controller here. Then I'm going to go to 24. I'm going to hit S to set a key there. Now for the foot here, on 1, I'm just going to hit E to select my rotation tool. And rotate that up a little bit like that. Maybe move it a little bit above the grid. Actually, what might help is if we go to Create Polygon Primitive, and with Interactive Creation on, what I'm going to do is Create Polygon Primitive. I'm going to create a plane. And that's just going to serve as sort of a ground for us. And I can click this button here to add another layer, and then just lock that so I don't select it. So here, we'll go ahead and lift this up just a little bit. And I'm going to move this foot back. And then for this one, I'm going to hit E to select my rotation. And you can actually just kind of, let's see. Let's go to, we want to rotate on X. There we go. Just kind of like rotate on X. Now the way I was able to do that, if you weren't sure, is when you select the area here at this nerve circle, I was able to left click on the word rotate X, and with my middle mouse button, I can kind of just sort of move it that way. All right, so I'm going to hit S to set a key on that, and then on 24, I'm going to set a key on that. So here's 1, making sure that both of these get keyed on 1 and 24. And I want to now go to frame 12. Sometimes you'll see this on 13. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zero out my rotation. And I'm just going to slide this back foot forward. Now notice I'm on frame 12. And I don't have to set any key because we turned on auto key. And then on my X, I just went like maybe minus 19. And we're just sort of learning the process. This isn't necessarily an animation course, so we're just kind of having fun learning. It doesn't necessarily have to be the best animation, it just has to be passable. So on my rotate X here, I'm going to zero that out. I'm going to slide that foot back And on rotate X, let's see, I have a value of roughly 10. And now if you notice, it's on, well, it looks like my rotate X is on 30, 31 roughly. This is where if it's facing the direction of the normal, it has this approach here. Now, if I want to switch this to world, like so this is the local, if I want to make this set to world where like it's always pointing, the green arrow is always, which is our y-axis, is always pointing up and down. I hold W down and I left click. I'm holding the left mouse button down. So just to be clear, holding W key down and then holding my left mouse button brings up this hotbox, and I can select world, and now that makes it a little bit easier to kind of go to world. And if I want it back to object, I hold W and then hold the left mouse button and go back to object. So generally, you know, I do either or, sort of animating it. Now, if done correctly, you can see we get some sliding of the feet. It loops because frames 1 and 24 are the same. Right? Now let's go ahead and select our shoulder here, our shoulder joint. And I'm going to turn off mesh here so we don't grab the polygons by accident. And on frame 1, it's the way it works is it's the counter arm. So this is the arm that's counter to that leg is forward. And let's go ahead and set a key on 1 and 24 there. And then I'm going to put a little bit of a bend in the elbow. And I'm going to hit S to set a key on 24 and S to set a key on 1. And then on 13, I'm just going to move this arm back. Oops. Let's make sure we grab the shoulder. Move the shoulder back. Because remember, counter leg, so it's sort of following that leg. And if I want to, I can actually select this elbow and straighten it out a little bit. So if I press play now, you can see that we got a little bit of a robotic kind of arm movement. So let's do the same thing. Go to 1, select this shoulder, bring it down. And I'm going to move it back a little bit. Give it just a slight bend. And then I want to make sure that both of these, so I'm going to hold shift. Now if you can't select it, you can hit Q to go to selection mode. 1S, S on 1 there, and then 24, I'm going to hit S2. And then when we go to frame, let's see, did I decide on 12 or 13? 13? What about these? Did I go to 12 on these? Yeah. I'll show you how to move keys around. But for now, as long as they're somewhere in the same ballpark. So 1 and 24, we now have it locked in. So let's just go to, we'll just do 13 for this one. And we'll shift everything over a little bit. So I'm going to move that forward. Give this a little bit more of a bend. And now when I press play, we have this very robotic generic walk. Maybe on 1, I want this to be a little bit more out on the side. And then I'm going to middle mouse click on 24 here. All right, now, no good animation is complete without a little bit of hip movement and up and down. Now, normally I would do contrapposto. You'll hear all these cool words. You can go online or take an animation course, actually. Might be the best way to do it if you want to learn how to do an effective, like a really good walk cycle. But I'm really only going to add maybe one more pose in between on 4 and 16, and then we'll call it on this tutorial. So on frame 4, what I'm going to do is I want this front foot to sort of stay up here. So I'm going to look at the distance here, and you can see the translate Z, right? That's where how far it is. It's currently at, let's say, 0.556. So I'm just going to click in this value, copy it, and then I'm going to go to frame 4, and I'm going to paste it in here. And I'm going to press enter. And then what I want to do is I want to get rid of that rotation. And I'm also going to move my character down a little bit. So what I get is my character, let's see if we can look at this a little bit better from the side. My character shifts down, and it's the same thing here. This foot, I actually want to, I want it to stay where it's at back here. So that's on Translate Z. On 4, so let's go ahead and pop that back in. And, oops, it looks like I selected the joint. There we go. Yeah, that's what we want. Okay. So our character starts to move down, and I actually kind of add a little bit of a back, so it looks like the character's kind of pushing off that back leg. So let's actually really exaggerate this. So on 4, I'm going to go down much lower. Here's 4, and then our character. It looks like I didn't keyframe 12 or 13 for that center circle. So I'm going to middle mouse click. So here we're on frame 1. Middle mouse click on 13, hit S to set a key. So you'll see we got a little up and down on that pose. So our character goes down. It looks like our feet are not, need to also be zeroed out here like that on frame 4. So just kind of moving them a little bit closer to the ground. There we go. So now it looks like our character moving down. We'll go like Looney Tunes style. And then up on 13. And then we'll do the same thing on 16. So here, let's go to frame 16. And what I want to do on 16 is same thing as before. So here on frame 12, we are 0.546. So I'm going to copy that on that front. And 16, I'm going to paste that in there. Or I'll just type it out. And the reason I had to type it out is because I hit Control-C by accident on the keyboard instead of Control-V. My rotation should be 0, and my translation on Y should be 0, so it's on the floor. And then on 4, I'm going to select the hips, because we're not doing any rotation, just up and down, and I'm going to middle mouse click on 16. Remember, middle mouse clicking, if you have the middle mouse held down, it will not change the pose. It won't scrub through your timeline. So I'm going to hit S to set a key there. So 13, and then on 16, our character goes down again. And remember what we did with this back foot. I'm going to go ahead and select this. And on 12, we had this value. So I'm going to copy that and then go all the way to 16 and then paste that value in there and hit enter. And maybe move it down just a little bit. So we get something like this. Now when I press play, we get this little robotic walk. Now, there are so many cooler, if you like I said, take an animation class when you get the push-off pose and all that. But for now, because this is a course that just sort of covers basics on how to get stuff in Engine, I think that's good enough if you can get something good like that. And here's the other bit. If it doesn't work out at first, redo it, scratch it, start from the beginning. So many times I've had to redo things to make them perfect. But anyway, we have a robotic walk going on. Looks good enough. So last step is saving it, Control-S, and then exporting it. So let's go to File, Export All. And then we have robot_idle. I'm going to do robot_walk. Oops. And I want to turn on animation here. And remember, we have frames 1 to 24. And with robot_walk, I'm going to hit Export All. I'm going to close that. And in the next video, we're going to import those FBXs into Unreal and start to set up our player character.